Hello and welcome to Cats Week. I'm Annalise Poorman. At the May 7th COVID-19 press conference, Bloomington Mayor John Hamilton confirmed that 40% of city staff members are fully vaccinated. He said that local vaccination numbers are important, especially as herd immunity becomes less likely as a country.
Indeed, it's kind of hit me a little more that maybe the local vaccination numbers just in our area are more important than we may have thought compared to everything else. That is, even if the state or the federal is at one level, if we can get our local vaccination numbers up higher, that really can help our community, even though we have visitors and even though we have a lot of interaction, of course, with others outside the community. If our resident community can get our vaccination numbers up, that can really be of great benefit. And
Monroe County Health Administrator Penny Caudill said the Indiana State Department of Health website now shows information on COVID-19 variants. She said Monroe County is seeing a higher rate of hospitalizations in younger Hoosiers. Caudill clarified this is likely because of the way the vaccine rolled out.
And we believe that much of that is due to vaccinations. We know that the majority of people in our community who have been vaccinated, the highest percentage group is those individuals over 60, and we thank them for being vaccinated, and we are seeing it make a difference.
Most local vaccine sites are currently offering walk-in appointments for first and second COVID-19 vaccines. The Bloomington Plan Commission discussed development of new multifamily housing at its May 10th meeting. Senior zoning planner Eric Grulich presented a proposal that would redevelop the East Side Kmart property into multifamily housing. He said the redevelopment would introduce 340 new units.
Here, the overall site plan. So I'll just kind of briefly go through some of the big points on this. The center portion of the building, the center portion of the site, they are proposing 4 buildings. These would all be student housing. They're classified as student housing due to the bedroom diversity within those buildings. And then on the south side of the site, they have 2 more multifamily apartment buildings, and then a parking garage on the west side of the site. So all total, they are looking at 340 dwelling units and 906 bedrooms.
Commissioner Jillian Kenzie asked about Blooming Foods. She identified it as an important part of Bloomington's community and asked petitioner Ryan Call for more details on how the plan would improve the lot. He responded that the plan helps define the border between the current Kmart building and Blooming Foods.
You know, it's not obvious at a first glance, but their parking lot is in its current form today. It's kind of strange how there's the borders between it and the Kmart are real ambiguous. And so we actually, by implementing this kind of east-west street and defining the edges of their parking, which is also required by the UDO, we restriped their entire lot. And we actually found a way to give them the spots they have in a smaller footprint, which then provided us a tremendous benefit from the 60-40 requirement. On the Clariz side,
Commissioner Susan Sandberg asked about affordable housing. She questioned why the petitioners chose not to take advantage of affordable housing incentives. Petitioner Mark Becker suggested that feedback received at public design meetings pushed them away from high-density affordable housing designs. Resident Lucy Shake refuted this, saying many of the suggestions residents proposed at the meetings are not present in the current plan.
Also, blaming the people at the charrette for getting rid of affordability is just kind of a low blow. We were asking for community housing. We were asking for workforce housing. We were asking for housing for people who are downsizing. The first things that we saw, the things that were put on the board, were townhouses, spaces that were really family friendly. Those were all taken away. Those aren't there anymore. And we didn't reduce it from the proposed 11 stories on the back of this lot to 4 stories, and somehow that's our fault that you can't include affordability. So I think that's kind of a low blow to add that in there. I think we can do better with this. Thank you.
The Plan Commission voted 8-0 to continue their discussion to the June 14th meeting, with Commissioner Chris Cockerham abstaining. At the May 10th Bloomington Utilities Service Board meeting, Director of Utilities Vic Kelson talked about the city's COVID-19 wastewater sampling program. He said that state funding for the program has run out, but the city would be pursuing additional funding through a federal program.
The Indiana Finance Authority started funding a program through 120water.com. And that's how we were able to expand our sampling program. I think James can back me up on this. We did the most samples and the most locations of any system in the state during that program, sampling at eight different locations. The funding for that ran out in December, and we decided to continue the program sampling just the wastewater plants once a week. And we've continued that just so there wouldn't be a gap in the data, in the hopes that there would be another externally funded program. And there is going to be a federally funded program as well that we've told IFA that we would, and 120 Water, that we would like to participate in that if we get the opportunity to. So.
Kelson stated that the rate of COVID-19 samples found in wastewater have been steady over the past few months. He clarified that these numbers were much lower than last year's numbers. At its May 12th meeting, the Ellettsville Town Council once again discussed returning to in-person meetings. Town Attorney Darla Brown outlined the restrictions set in place by state legislation regarding hosting meetings with both in-person and online attendance. She specified that 50% of council members must attend meetings in person. Councilmember William Ellis said his concern was for whether residents could attend electronically, not council members.
I mean, I know from the aspect of the council remotely, that's not even factoring into me, because if we vote to go in person, I'll be there. And the other council maybe. My only concern is the remote for the public. We were there in person before. There's no reason we can't be there in person again. That's my thoughts on that.
Ellis moved for the town council to meet in person at its June 14th meeting. He said this would give council members time to draft an ordinance concerning online attendance at its May 24th meeting. The council approved the motion unanimously. The Bloomington Board of Public Works discussed the Bloomington Handmade Market at their May 11th meeting. Assistant Director for the Arts, Sean Starowitz, presented a resolution to allow the Handmade Market to host its summer market. Director of Public Works, Adam Wason, clarified that the festival would have to be flexible with ever-changing COVID-19 guidelines.
There are ever-changing guidelines that we are seeing come out, just depending on what's going on up at the State House and with the governor's office and all the different legislative, executive actions being taken. And so just for the board and others, we're going to be fluid in this. We're going to see what comes out of Indianapolis, what's put onto the locals in terms of local government agencies, and what discretion, decision-making we have, abilities we have. And I appreciate Sean mentioning, that masks would be required. As we move into the future, some of these things may change, but it'll all be based on our compliance with state and local guidelines and, just in compliance with all of that. So,
Board member Kyla Cox-Deckard was excited for Bloomington to host a coronavirus compliant festival. She identified this as an opportunity to utilize some of the safety measures installed on Kirkwood during the pandemic.
That this not only is a great opportunity for us to have an outdoor gathering that we can do in a way that responds to the needs of COVID compliance, but also that this opportunity to use Kirkwood and the infrastructure that has been put in place for safety with the bollards, as opposed to having to have temporary barricades up, is a great opportunity for the city as well.
Board members passed the resolution unanimously. The Monroe County Council discussed approval of an airport coronavirus response grant. Director of Aviation Carlos Laverty explained that the grant would help with Monroe County Airport's air traffic control operations and pandemic upkeep expenses.
The Federal Aviation Administration issued the Airport Coronavirus Response Grant, which favored airports with air traffic control towers. There was two portions to this grant. There was approximately $34,000 that goes strictly to air traffic control tower operations, and then $23,000 that goes to airports our size to assist in COVID related operations like contractual cleaning, and whatever kind of expenses we may have incurred with distancing people and any kind of supplies.
Laverty also brought up a potential upgrade to the airport's radio communications. He said the current system works very well, but that maintaining it is becoming more difficult as parts become harder to obtain.
The tower radios that are in there now, they're very old. They still work very well for us, but when we look ahead at maintaining those radios in the years to come, parts are becoming more and more scarce. Our service technician who services them right now is having to source parts from China, and he said he's noticing that they're becoming more and more scarce. So that is definitely on our radar.
The council unanimously approved the request. At the May 11th Bloomington Commission on Sustainability meeting, the commissioners discussed a new working group. Commissioner Colin Murphy proposed the Just Transition Working Group to research models of economic development. He referred to a model used in Cleveland that empowers worker-owned businesses.
The idea is to leverage the purchasing power of these anchor institutions by putting those purchasing power dollars in the community. So there is a structure, and I think it's in the next slide. Here it is. Okay. So the Cleveland model, right? So it's essentially this, it's a nonprofit organization that incubates worker-owned and managed cooperative businesses. And these businesses help to supply the anchor institutions with their everyday goods and services, if you will.
Murphy suggested that the group could also study how materials and energy flow through Bloomington. He said understanding urban metabolism could improve the city's climate action plan.
What do I mean by urban metabolism? I mean all of the resources, all of the stuff and materials that come into the city, that the city consumes, and then all of the waste that comes out as a result of that metabolism, right? Because every city, every society, just like a human being, has a metabolism, right? It metabolizes inputs and it excretes outputs, if you will. And I'm thinking that, urban metabolism studies is growing as a field globally. Studying our urban metabolism could help us to enhance Bloomington's climate action plan going forward, make it possibly even more rigorous. I don't know.
Commissioner Christina Anderson suggested this working group start small scale. She suggested starting with short-term goals. Commissioner Joseph Winia added that the commission's time is already spread thin. The commission will continue the discussion at its June 8th meeting. The Bloomington Economic Development Commission reviewed resolutions regarding tax abatements for retreat at the Switchyard. At the May 12th meeting, Director of Economic and Sustainable Development, Alex Crowley, recommended approval of both resolutions. He said the building is the best-case scenario for use of the land.
The fact that the land is appraised so high also speaks to its placement in near the park, and it's exactly what we would expect to see. We are especially pleased that we were able to potentially put an affordable housing development in a parcel of land that, frankly, had the city not become involved, would be very difficult to deliver affordability to. So
Commissioner Kate Rosenbarger questioned petitioner Jeff Ryan on units reserved for Stonebelt. She asked for clarification on how rooms will be held for Stonebelt clients.
So 10 units are set aside for Stonebelt. That's what I'm reading in the packet, right? Do you know which ones those are, or is that just going to also be like kind of free flowing as needed type thing?
That will also be free flowing as needed. That because, the Stonebelt thinks that they will have roommate situations, but they also may have where they aren't. Or it could be a family that has a client with Stonebelt that wants it, so we'll see who comes in, but those are set aside. We cannot rent those to other people unless we absolutely cannot fill them with clients of Stonebelt or similar.
The commissioners unanimously approved the resolutions. The Monroe County Commissioners discussed amending the zoning map around South Rogers Street. At the May 12th meeting, Planner Drew Myers proposed an amendment that would expand and rezone the Joseph Green PUD from several various zones into one mixed-use residential zone. He explained the new property would add additional homes for county workers and act as a hub for the Clear Creek community.
They're proposing a mixed-use development that would include attached townhomes, multifamily residences, and some commercial space. It's designed to provide additional housing options for working individuals and families within the county and act as a neighborhood center for Clear Creek community. The proposal includes multiple road connections and alternative transportation connections, including a multi-use path, as well as that road extension into what would be the Southern Meadows subdivision area, which is adjacent to the east. And it is to be built out in 3 phases, proposed from July 2021 to July 2024.
Commissioner Lee Jones expressed concern over the amount of available parking. She worried that there would not be enough spaces for residents and businesses to share.
With the number being so much lower than the recommended amount, it really concerns me, especially for the residents. If an extremely popular business goes in and the spaces are all mutually shared, then it could end up with a business using so many spaces that residents wouldn't be able to go home.
The commissioners agreed that the proposed plan is too dense. Commissioner Julie Thomas added that the county can see some density, but should never look like Bloomington.
We are the county, we are not the city. And let's just be clear about that. We are the county and we can do some higher density, but I don't think we should look like the city. And I don't think that residents want parts of the city spread throughout the county.
The commissioners rejected the amendment unanimously. The Monroe County Stormwater Management Board received reports from Friends of Lake Monroe at its May 12th meeting. Watershed Coordinator Maggie Sullivan listed several potential projects, including redesigning the Brown County Fairgrounds.
And then Brown County Fairgrounds, they had a design done a little while ago looking at Greasy Creek runs straight through the fairgrounds. So they were looking at, could they put a little more separation between their livestock barns and the creek and maybe have a heavy use area protection and restore the riparian buffer here and maybe even across the street onto the high school property as a really nice showcase, since a lot of people come through the fairgrounds during the fair and for other events.
Friends of Lake Monroe President Sherry Mitchell Bruker asked the board to support funding Sullivan. She stated that the watershed coordinator position is vital to the work FLM does and that they needed support during the gap between grants.
What we need is to fund our watershed coordinator during the gap between the grants. And Maggie explained that her funding ends in January of 2022. That leaves a period, assuming we would get the next 319 implementation grant from February to October, where that position is unfunded. And we would like to keep that moving, keep that momentum going, lay groundwork for our implementation projects and outreach and education.
All 4 commissioners showed interest in funding the position. Friends of Lake Monroe will draft a resolution for the exact funds and present it at a future meeting. Historical Preservation Program Manager Connor Hederick presented an application for a historic facade grant at the May 12th meeting of the Bloomington Urban Enterprise Association. He stated the Bloomington Farm Stop Collective requested the grant funds for renovations at 902 West Kirkwood Avenue. Hederick clarified that the petitioner did not have to wait for the grant approval to begin work on the building.
So you can see that a lot of the work has actually already been done. And I just want to remind the BUEA that there's nothing in the program guidelines that say that work cannot start before, funds are approved or funds are released. That's kind of on a per project basis. But I will say that I worked with the applicants before any work was done, and I gave my approval to the scope of works.
Petitioner Larry Howard talked about Farm Stop's goals. He said Farm Stop would benefit local farmers who have been underrepresented in local farmers markets.
The unfortunate thing is that local farmers here in Bloomington and Monroe County are still very, very underrepresented in that market. And we'd really like to see this take off because it really is an opportunity for igniting the food system here in Bloomington and Monroe County. So we're excited about it.
The UEA approved the grant funding unanimously. The Bloomington City Council continued its discussion on duplexes in residential areas at its May 12th special session. Councilmember Susan Sandberg introduced an amendment reducing the number of beds in each side of a duplex to 2, with a 3rd bedroom available as a low-income incentive. She said this is one of the tools the council can use to ensure housing stays affordable in some parts of Bloomington.
In prime locations, such as near the downtown and IU, market rates will be a factor in the cost of these emerging duplexes. Market rents will not achieve the intended goal of mixing incomes and advancing equity in these desirable neighborhoods without public sector intervention. We have this tool. Why not use it?
Director of Planning and Transportation Scott Robinson expressed doubt that the incentive would work. He referred to other large projects that are already ignoring affordable housing incentives.
I'm cautiously optimistic our incentives have established the right criteria, but at this Monday's Plan Commission meeting, Trinitas vendors introduced their redevelopment proposal for the Kmart site. It has proposed 340 units, 906 bedrooms at this time. They have not considered either the affordable housing incentives nor the sustainable development incentives. This amendment has the ratio structured at 50% or 100% of the units being affordable. The nature of the duplex does not offer enough units or bedrooms to provide any real incentive to leverage affordable units or bedrooms.
The amendment failed 4-5, with council members Dave Rollo, Susan Sandberg, Ron Smith, and Sue Scambaluri voting in support of the amendment. The Bloomington Historic Preservation Commission considered replacement windows for a house in Greater Prospect Hill. At the May 13th meeting, Historic Preservation Program Manager Connor Hederick presented a request to replace the roof and windows of a home on West 4th Street. He said that the district guidelines are less strict and that requests like this have been approved in the past.
The Greater Prospect Hill Historic District was intended to be more lenient and has generally supported petitions of this nature in the past. Almost all petitions that deal with replacement of original windows on contributing homes in Greater Prospect Hill have been approved, at least in my tenure here. So staff would recommend approval of COA 2120.
Commissioner Chris Sturbaum showed concern about safely replacing the windows. He worried the windows may be screwed into asbestos.
No, see how narrow the trim is around the windows?
Yes.
I think it looks to me like the asbestos siding was flushed across the face of that trim. And I don't know how you're going to take the trim off without harming the asbestos siding. So it may be a can of worms.
The commission rejected the request 3-1, with Commissioner Sam DeSoler voting against rejection. Commissioner Doug Bruce abstained. At its May 13th special session, the Bloomington City Council discussed the adoption of a new Unified Development Ordinance. Jackie Scanlon introduced the ordinance, which would repeal and replace the old UDO with the new one as approved by City Council. Council member Sue Scambaluri asked Scanlon if she thought Bloomington was becoming PUD averse. Scanlon suggested that the council revise PUD regulations if they were worried that that may be the case.
Most of the PUDs are quite old. We still see PUDs come forward. You all, again, with the help of the administration, just last year changed the PUD requirements. I think if anything is to look at about whether or not we're PUD averse, we should look at our PUD regulations and see if we think they're that they're friendly to development. Whether or not we leave old PUDs on the map, I don't think points to whether or not we are PUD averse.
The council voted to adopt the new UDO 8-1, with council member Dave Rollo dissenting. And that is all for Cats Week. Thank you for joining us. For Cats and WFHB, I'm Annalise Poorman.